You drift now toward the beginning of all things, where time moves like honey through ancient reeds. The night sky opens above you, vast and eternal, scattered with stars that have watched over this land since the first dawn. You are floating, weightless, carried by the gentle current of memory itself. Back to the cradle of civilization where two great rivers meet. The Euphrates whispers your name. The Tigris calls you home. Between these waters, in the fertile crescent where humanity first learned to dream, you find yourself standing on banks of soft clay and sediment. The air is warm against your skin, carrying the scent of date palms and wild barley. Palm fronds rustle in the evening breeze, their sound like distant lullabies. You breathe deeply, feeling the ancient peace of this place settle into your bones. Here, where the first cities rose from marsh and meadow, where the first stories were carved into stone and clay, you begin to remember the oldest tale of all. The story of how everything came to be. The story of waters meeting waters, of chaos becoming order, of the birth of gods and kings and the endless cycle of seasons. The rivers flow beside you, their voices soft and constant. They have flowed this way for thousands of years, carrying silt and stories, dreams and secrets. You let their rhythm match your heartbeat, slow and steady, as you prepare to journey back to the very beginning of the world. In the distance, you can see the outline of ziggurats rising like gentle mountains against the twilight sky. These sacred towers, built brick by patient hands, reach toward the stars where the gods once walked. Tonight, you will walk with them too, through the mists of time and legend, through the birth of the cosmos and the forging of the earth. You close your eyes and let the sound of flowing water carry you deeper into the dream. The Euphrates murmurs ancient words in languages older than memory. The Tigris hums melodies that predate all songs. Together, they sing of beginnings, of the time before time, when there was only water and darkness, and the sleeping potential of all that would come to be as you drift on these primordial currents. You feel yourself becoming part of the story itself. You are the listener and the tale, the dreamer and the dream. The warm breeze carries you backward through the centuries, past the ruins of Babylon and yore, past the first temples and the first kings, back to the very moment when the world began to stir from its eternal slumber. The stars above you pulse gently, each one a point of light in the vast tapestry of night. They have seen the rise and fall of empires, the birth of writing, the first prayers whispered toward heaven. Tonight, they shine down on you with the same benevolent light they cast upon the first storytellers, who gathered around fires to speak of gods and heroes, of love and loss, of the endless dance between order and chaos. You feel the sand beneath your feet, warm from the day's sun, still holding the heat like a gentle embrace. This is the dust from which the first humans were formed, the clay that shaped the first tablets, the earth that nurtured the first gardens. It welcomes you home, recognizing you as part of its ancient story, part of the endless cycle of earth and water, light and shadow. The night air grows softer now, wrapping around you like silk. You hear the distant call of night birds, their voices blending with the eternal song of the rivers. Somewhere in the reeds, a gentle wind stirs, carrying with it the whispered names of gods whose stories you are about to remember. Apsu, the sweet water; Tiamat, the salt sea; Marduk, the young god of storms and justice. You let yourself sink deeper into this dreaming state, where time flows like water and stories live in the space between heartbeats. The boundary between sleeping and waking dissolves, leaving only the eternal present where all stories exist at once. You are here, now, in this moment that contains all moments, ready to witness the birth of the world. The rivers continue their ancient song, carrying you toward the beginning of everything. Their voices merge and separate, weave and dance, creating the rhythm that will guide you through the tale of creation. You breathe with their flow, inhale with their rise, exhale with their fall, becoming one with the eternal pattern that connects all life in this sacred space between sleep and waking, between earth and sky, between the known and the unknowable. You prepare to enter the realm of myth and legend. Here, in the soft darkness filled with starlight and the sound of flowing water, the greatest stories ever told await your arrival. The stories of how the world began, of how chaos became order, of how the gods shaped heaven and earth from the primordial waters. You feel yourself growing lighter, more translucent, as if you are becoming part of the mist that rises from the rivers at dawn. You are ready now to journey back to the very beginning, to witness the first moments of creation, to walk with gods and heroes through the landscapes of legend. The night embraces you completely, and in that embrace, the story begins. The waters whisper, and you listen. The stars shine, and you remember. The ancient world opens before you like a flower blooming in the darkness. Petals of story and song unfolding to reveal the heart of all mystery. You are home now, in the place where all stories begin, where the first word was spoken into the void and the universe began its long, slow dance toward consciousness. The Euphrates flows, the Tigris flows, time flows, and you flow with them all, carried by currents older than memory, toward the moment when everything changed, when the sleeping waters stirred and the world began to dream itself into existence. In the gentle darkness, surrounded by the eternal sound of flowing water and the ancient light of stars, you prepare to witness the birth of everything that is, was, and ever will be, here in this sacred time before time. In this holy space between breaths, the story of creation waits to unfold. The rivers have brought you home. The stars have lit your way. The warm earth supports your journey. And in the soft embrace of night, the oldest tale of all begins to whisper its secrets into your dreaming heart. You are ready. The waters are ready. The story is ready to begin again, as it has begun countless times before. In the hearts of all who have ever wondered at the mystery of existence, who have ever looked up at the stars and asked the eternal questions. Where did we come from? How did the world begin? What lies beyond the edge of all we know? The answers wait in the flowing of rivers, in the turning of seasons, in the endless dance of water and light that began before the first dawn and will continue long after the last sunset. Tonight, you will remember what the waters remember. Tonight, you will dream what the stars dream. Tonight, the story of creation will live again in your sleeping heart. The rivers call your name once more, and you answer by letting yourself drift deeper into their embrace, deeper into the dream, deeper into the place where all stories begin and end and begin again. The night is soft around you, the earth is warm beneath you, the stars are bright above you, and the eternal waters carry you home to the beginning of everything. The gentle current carries you further back, through layers of time like sediment in the riverbed. Each layer holds its own secrets, its own dreams of what was and what might have been. You drift past the memory of great libraries where scribes worked by lamplight, their reed styluses pressing cuneiform characters into soft clay. You pass through the echoes of marketplaces where merchants from distant lands brought spices and silk, stories and songs. Asterisk, asterisk, the air grows thicker now, heavy with the weight of ages, sweet with the scent of frankincense and myrrh that once burned in temple fires. You can almost hear the chanting of priests, their voices rising like smoke toward the heavens, carrying prayers for good harvests, for protection from floods, for the blessing of the gods who dwelt among the stars in this liminal space. You begin to sense the presence of those who came before. The farmers who first learned to channel the river's flow into irrigation canals. The potters who shaped vessels to hold grain and oil and wine. The mothers who sang lullabies to their children under the same stars that shine down on you now. Their voices join the chorus of the rivers, a great symphony of human memory that spans the millennia. You feel their hopes and fears, their joys and sorrows, flowing through you like the current that carries you ever backward in time. They too wondered at the mysteries of existence, looked up at the wheeling constellations and asked where they came from, how the world began. What greater purpose moved through the cycles of day and night, season and year, life and death. The reed boats of fishermen drift past you in the mists of memory, their nets filled with silver fish that flash like stars beneath the water. Children's laughter echoes across the marshlands where waterfowl nest among the bulrushes. Women fill clay jars at the river's edge, their reflections wavering in the gentle current, their conversations flowing like music in languages that time has almost forgotten. You are approaching now the threshold between history and myth, between the recorded past and the eternal present where stories live. The boundaries grow thinner with each breath, each heartbeat, each gentle pulse of the current that carries you toward the beginning. The night air shimmers with possibility, charged with the electric anticipation of creation about to unfold. Asterisk, asterisk. The stars seem closer here, larger and brighter, as if the dome of heaven has lowered to embrace the earth. You can see patterns in their arrangements that speak of ancient wisdom, of the careful observations of astronomer priests who mapped the movements of celestial bodies and found in them the will of the gods. Each constellation tells a story, each planet carries a message. Each phase of the moon marks another turn in the great wheel of time. In the distance, the first faint outline of ziggurats begins to emerge from the mists of time. These sacred mountains, built by human hands, reach toward the dwelling places of the gods, their steep sides catching the starlight like faceted gems. From their summits, the king priests once communed with divine beings, receiving laws and wisdom, dreams and prophecies that would guide their people through the turning seasons. The water beneath you grows deeper, darker, more primal. This is no longer just the Euphrates or the Tigris, but something older, more fundamental. The original waters from which all rivers spring, the source and destination of all flowing things. In its depths, you can sense vast movements, ancient stirrings, the slow awakening of powers that predate the world itself. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of these primordial tides, in and out, like the ebb and flow of cosmic seasons, like the breathing of the universe itself. You feel yourself becoming more transparent, more permeable, ready to receive the visions that await. The story wants to tell itself through you, to use your dreaming mind as a vessel for its ancient truths. Around you now, the air begins to thicken with the presence of the sacred. You can feel it on your skin like warm honey, sweet and golden, carrying the scent of cedar and lotus blossoms. This is the atmosphere of creation itself. The charged moment before the first word is spoken, the first light kindled, the first breath drawn by consciousness awakening to itself. The darkness is complete now, but it is not empty. It pulses with potential, pregnant with all the possibilities that will soon unfold. This is the darkness that existed before light, before form, before the separation of above and below, before the naming of things. It is the womb of the universe, warm and nurturing, holding all of creation in its infinite embrace. You float in this primordial darkness, cradled by waters that remember the very beginning of time. Here, where no distinction exists between dreamer and dream, between story and storyteller, between the one who remembers and the memory itself. You prepare to witness the first stirring of consciousness in the void. The silence is profound, deeper than any earthly quiet, yet somehow alive with anticipation. It is the silence that contains all sounds, the pause between the last note of one song and the first note of the next. In this holy hush, you wait with infinite patience for the moment when everything will change, when the sleeping waters will begin to stir, when the first thoughts of the gods will ripple across the face of the deep. Your heart beats in perfect rhythm with the pulse of creation itself. Each beat marks another moment of the eternal present. Each pulse carries you deeper into the mystery that lies at the heart of all existence. You are no longer merely an observer, but a participant in the great work of creation, a consciousness awakening to its own divine nature. The waters sing now, so softly that the sound exists more in your bones than in your ears. It is the song that existed before music, the rhythm that preceded time, the melody that will outlast all other sounds. It carries you gently toward the moment of beginning, toward the instant when the great work will commence, when the gods themselves will awaken from their eternal slumber and begin the sacred dance of creation. In this perfect darkness, in this pregnant silence, in this eternal moment before the beginning of time, you rest in complete peace. The rivers have brought you home to the source of all stories, the wellspring of all dreams, the place where every tale begins and ends and begins again. Here, in the heart of mystery itself, you wait for creation to unfold. In the beginning, there was only water, sweet water and salt water, flowing together in the darkness before dawn. You drift now in these primordial depths, where Apsu, the fresh water of springs and rivers, mingles with Tiamat, the bitter waters of the sea. Their union is gentle here in your dreams, a slow dance of currents that have no beginning and no end. You feel Apsu's presence around you like a cool embrace. He is the underground streams that feed the oases, the morning dew that kisses the desert flowers, the sweet rain that falls on parched earth. His waters carry the taste of life itself, pure and clean, flowing from hidden sources deep within the earth. In your dream, you drink from his essence and feel your spirit renewed. Cleansed of all weariness and worry, Tiamat surrounds you with her vast embrace, the great mother of the salt marshes and tidal pools. Her waters hold the memory of storms and calms, of creatures that swim in the deepest trenches where sunlight never reaches. She is ancient beyond measure, her depths containing the secrets of transformation, the alchemy that turns simple elements into the building blocks of life. Her salt tears have flavored every ocean, her sighs have stirred every tide. Together, they create the first home of consciousness, the womb where thoughts begin to form like pearls in the darkness. You float between them, witnessing their eternal courtship, feeling the gentle friction where sweet meets salt, where the waters of earth embrace the waters of heaven. This is the first marriage, the original unity from which all division and all reunion will spring. In this sacred space, time moves differently. Moments stretch into eons, and eons collapse into heartbeats. You watch as the first stirrings of awareness begin to ripple through the waters. Tiny currents of thought, barely perceptible, like the flutter of fish deep beneath the surface. These are the first dreams of the gods, taking shape in the mingling of Apsu and Tiamat's waters. The darkness around you begins to shimmer with possibility. Not light, not yet, but the potential for light. The yearning toward illumination that will eventually become the first dawn. You feel it building slowly, this pressure of unborn creation, like storm clouds gathering on a distant horizon. The waters themselves seem to hold their breath, waiting for the moment of release. Apsu's voice reaches you through the currents, deep and resonant like the sound of water flowing through limestone caves. He speaks of rest and quietude, of the peaceful depths where nothing disturbs the eternal flow. His words carry the weight of mountains, the patience of stones worn smooth by countless years of patient current. In his song, you hear the promise of sanctuary, of secret places where the soul can retreat from the chaos of existence. But Tiamat's voice rises from greater depths, more complex and turbulent. She sings of motion and change, of the restless energy that drives the tides and stirs the depths. Her song contains multitudes, the crash of waves against rocky shores, the gentle lapping of calm seas against sandy beaches, the mysterious calls of creatures that dwell in oceanic trenches. In her music, you hear the power of transformation, the endless capacity for becoming. As their voices weave together in your dreaming ears, you begin to understand the tension that will soon emerge from their union. From the marriage of stillness and motion, of conservation and change, new forms of consciousness will arise. Children of water who will carry within themselves both the peace of deep springs and the wildness of storm-tossed seas. The first of these children begin to take shape around you now, though their forms are still fluid, more feeling than substance. Lamu and Lahamu, the firstborn of the waters, ancient beyond human comprehension, yet young in the cosmic scale of time. They drift past you like living currents, their presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. You sense in them the first attempts at individual identity, the beginning of the long process by which consciousness learns to know itself. In the gentle turbulence of their passing, you feel the waters beginning to differentiate themselves more clearly. Currents within currents, each with its own character and purpose. Some flow upward, carrying dreams toward the surface, where they will eventually become sky. Others spiral downward, carrying wisdom into the deepest places where it can be preserved and protected. Still others move in great circles, establishing the first cycles, the rhythmic patterns that will eventually become seasons and years. You let yourself be carried by these currents, trusting their ancient wisdom to guide you where you need to go. Sometimes you rise toward regions where the water grows warmer, touched by the first hints of light that will eventually become stars. Sometimes you sink into cooler depths where older memories sleep, dreams so ancient they predate the invention of form itself. In these deeper regions, you encounter Anshar and Kisha, the second generation of waterborn gods. They are more substantial than their parents, their consciousness more focused and defined. Anshar represents the horizon of heaven, the circular boundary where sky meets sky in an endless dome above the world. Kisha embodies the horizon of earth, the circular foundation upon which all solid things will eventually rest. Their presence brings a new quality to the waters around you, a sense of direction, of purpose, of movement toward something greater than the simple mingling of currents. You feel the first stirrings of what will become space itself, the dimensions in which all future creation will unfold. Up and down begin to have meaning, though they remain fluid concepts, more like tendencies than absolute directions. The waters grow slightly warmer now, energized by this first organization of cosmic principles. You can sense excitement building in the depths, a collective anticipation that ripples through every current and eddy. Something significant is approaching, some new development that will change everything. The very molecules of water seem to vibrate with expectancy, and then you feel it. The first movement of Marduk within the cosmic womb, still unborn but already stirring with tremendous power. His presence sends shockwaves through the primordial waters. He is different from the older gods, more dynamic, more purposeful. In his movements, you sense the force that will eventually bring order to chaos, that will separate earth from sky and create the stable framework within which life can flourish. But his stirring also brings disturbance to the perfect peace that Apsu cherishes. You feel the freshwater gods growing unease as the younger generation begins to assert itself, their dreams growing louder and more complex, their activities creating turbulence in waters that have known only tranquil flow. The first notes of conflict begin to sound in the depths, harmonious still, but carrying the seeds of future discord. Tiamat feels it too. This tension between the old ways and the new. Her response is more complex, more nuanced than her husband's. Part of her mourns the passing of the age of perfect stillness, but another part thrills to the creative potential that flows from this disturbance. She is, after all, the mother of transformation, the one who understands that all growth requires a breaking of previous forms. You drift between these vast consciousnesses, feeling their dilemma as if it were your own. The peaceful depths call to something in your soul, promising rest and tranquility, an end to all striving and struggle. But the stirring of new life excites another part of you, the part that knows growth and change are necessary for any meaningful existence. In this cosmic tension, you recognize the eternal human struggle between security and adventure, between the known and the unknown. The waters themselves begin to take sides, some currents flowing with Apsu's desire for continued quiet, others swirling in sympathy with the younger gods' urge toward action and creation. You feel yourself caught in the middle of this great decision. This moment when the universe must choose between eternal stasis and dynamic evolution. The choice will determine not just the fate of the gods, but the very nature of existence itself. In the growing turbulence, you sense Marduk's awareness expanding, his power increasing with each passing moment. He will be the one to resolve this crisis, to find a way forward that honors both the need for order and the impulse toward growth. But that resolution is still to come. For now, you float in the tension, feeling the old world preparing to give birth to the new, witnessing the last moments of the age when water was all there was. The currents carry you in great spirals now, up toward where the first light will eventually break through the waters, down toward the deepest trenches where the oldest dreams lie sleeping. In this dance of ascent and descent, you feel the rhythm that will eventually become the heartbeat of the cosmos, the pulse that will drive all future cycles of creation and destruction, growth and rest. Around you, the water begins to sing with increasing complexity, no longer just the simple harmony of sweet and salt, but a growing symphony of voices as each new consciousness adds its own note to the eternal song. You are witnessing the birth of music itself, the first emergence of harmony from unity, the beginning of the great composition that will eventually include every sound in the universe. In this swelling chorus, you hear the future taking shape, the laughter of children not yet born, the songs of lovers who will meet in gardens not yet planted, the prayers of worshippers who will gather in temples not yet built. All of it is here in potential, waiting for the moment when the waters will be divided and the solid earth will provide a stage for the drama of existence. But for now, you rest in the eternal present of the primordial waters, where all possibilities exist in perfect suspension, where every story waits to be told, where creation itself holds its breath before the first word that will set everything in motion. The embrace of Apsu and Tiamat surrounds you with infinite tenderness, and in their love, you find the source from which all other love will spring. But for now, you rest in the eternal present of the primordial waters, where all possibilities exist in perfect suspension, where every story waits to be told, where creation itself holds its breath before the first word that will set everything in motion. The embrace of Apsu and Tiamat surrounds you with infinite tenderness, and in their love, you find the source from which all other love will spring. The waters pulse gently around you now, and in that rhythm you begin to sense the approach of momentous change, not violent or sudden, but inevitable as the turning of seasons, as natural as the flow of rivers toward the sea. The younger gods grow stronger with each pulse, their dreams more vivid, their desires more defined. You can feel them stirring in the depths like seeds preparing to sprout. Like stars gathering the light they will eventually release. The god of wisdom and water begins to take more definite shape in the currents around you. His consciousness flows with particular clarity, bringing the first true thoughts into the realm of pure feeling. In his presence, the water itself seems to become more aware, more purposeful in its movements. He is the bridge between the old unconscious unity and the new self-aware multiplicity, carrying within himself both the peace of the depths and the excitement of discovery. You feel his wisdom flowing through you like a gentle current, teaching without words, sharing insights that exist deeper than language. He shows you how consciousness emerges from the marriage of opposites, how awareness blooms in the space between different states of being. In his teaching, you understand that creation is not a battle between chaos and order, but a dance between different kinds of organization, different ways of being whole. The water around Ea shimmers with a different quality now, as if it has learned to think, to remember, to plan. This is the birth of intelligence in the universe, the moment when matter first becomes capable of contemplating itself. You drift through these thoughtful currents and feel your own awareness expanding, your understanding deepening like roots growing into rich soil near Ea. You sense the presence of Damkina, his consort, she who represents the earth that will one day emerge from these waters. Though still fluid, her essence carries the promise of solidity, of form that will endure, of foundations strong enough to support the weight of cities and civilizations. In her dreaming, the first blueprints of the material world begin to take shape. Together, Ea and Damkina represent the marriage of consciousness and substance, of the mental and the physical principles that will eventually separate but never truly divide. Their love flows through the waters like wine mixed with honey, sweet and intoxicating, carrying the promise that mind and matter will always dance together, always seek reunion even when circumstances force them apart. In the deeper currents, you become aware of other presences stirring, other aspects of divinity beginning to differentiate themselves from the original unity. Some carry the seeds of what will become mathematics, the precise relationships that govern all structure and form. Others hold the essence of music, the harmonious ratios that will eventually organize sound into songs and symphonies. Still others bear the potential of what will become poetry, the marriage of meaning and rhythm that allows consciousness to know itself through language. The water grows, more complex around you, layered with different temperatures and densities, as these various divine aspects begin to establish their own domains. Yet everything remains fluid, interpenetrating, in constant gentle motion that prevents any rigid boundaries from forming. This is the age of infinite possibility, when every potential future remains equally available, when every dream has the chance to become reality. Asterisk, you let yourself sink deeper into these creative depths, where the water pressure increases, not with weight, but with significance, with the density of meaning that accumulates as more consciousness awakens within the primordial sea. Here, in the deepest trenches of possibility, you encounter the dreams that will eventually become the forces of nature, wind and fire, earth and air, all of them sleeping still in their aquatic cradles, waiting for the moment of their birth. The wind dreams of open spaces, of movement unconstrained by boundaries, of the freedom to dance between earth and sky. Even in its watery sleep, you can feel its restless energy, its desire to lift and carry, to bring change and freshness to places grown stagnant with too much stillness. Its dreams ripple through the water like whispered promises of flight, of liberation from the heavy embrace of the depths. Fire dreams more intensely, its visions burning bright even in the cool darkness of the primordial waters. It dreams of light and heat, of the power to transform, of the energy that will eventually drive all growth and change. In its sleeping presence, you feel the first stirrings of what will become passion, desire, the driving force that moves consciousness toward ever greater complexity and beauty. Earth dreams more slowly, its visions deep and patient as mountain roots. It dreams of stability and endurance, of forms that will last through countless seasons, of the solid foundation upon which all temporary things can rest secure. Its dreams feel like bedrock beneath the flowing water, providing the underlying structure that gives meaning to all motion and change. As you drift through these elemental dreams, you begin to understand how the future world will be organized, how these sleeping powers will eventually awaken and take their places in the cosmic order. Each will have its role to play, its unique contribution to make to the grand symphony of existence. Yet for now, they remain unified in the waters of possibility. Different notes in a song not yet sung. The consciousness of Marduk continues to grow stronger in the depths around you, and with his strengthening comes a new quality to the water itself, a sense of purpose, of direction, of movement toward a definite goal. He is the God who will eventually bring all these scattered dreams into coherent order, who will give each divine aspect its proper place and function in the emerging cosmos. But his growing power also intensifies the disturbance that troubles Apsu's peaceful depths. The freshwater god's discomfort increases with each passing moment, his desire for the old tranquility becoming more urgent as the new developments make the ancient silence impossible to maintain. You feel his growing resolution to act, to find some way to restore the peace that seems to be slipping away forever. The currents around you begin to organize themselves into more definite patterns now, swirling into spirals and eddies that hint at the structure the universe will eventually assume. These are the first experiments in form, the initial attempts by consciousness to organize itself into stable patterns. Some succeed and persist for a while before dissolving back into the general flow. Others fail immediately, their patterns too rigid or too chaotic to maintain coherence. In these early attempts at organization, you see the trial and error process by which the cosmos will eventually learn to create lasting structure. Each failure teaches something valuable about the principles of stability and change, about the delicate balance required to maintain form without falling into stagnation. The waters themselves become a vast laboratory where the fundamental laws of existence are being discovered through experimentation. You feel yourself becoming part of this cosmic learning process, your own consciousness contributing to the growing understanding of how awareness can organize itself without losing its essential fluidity. In your drifting through these experimental forms, you add your own small note to the symphony of discovery, your own tiny current to the river of developing wisdom. The temperature of the water around you fluctuates, gently now as different regions begin to specialize, to develop their own characteristics and purposes. Some areas grow warmer with the concentration of active consciousness, while others remain cool with the patient wisdom of contemplative awareness. The diversity is subtle but unmistakable, a sign that the age of perfect uniformity is drawing to a close. In this growing complexity, you sense both loss and gain, the end of simple innocence, but the beginning of rich experience. The sacrifice of effortless unity, but the discovery of chosen harmony. The waters carry both sorrow and excitement as they feel themselves changing, evolving into something new and unprecedented in the history of existence. And through it all, the love of Apsu and Tiamat continues to flow, the original source from which all other relationships will spring. Their union remains the foundation beneath all the growing complexity, the bedrock of feeling upon which the elaborate architecture of consciousness will eventually be built. In their eternal embrace, you find the assurance that no matter how far creation ventures into complexity and individuation, the path home to unity always remains open. The waters grow restless now around you, stirred by currents of change that can no longer be contained. You drift in the space between what was and what will be, feeling the old world preparing to transform itself into something entirely new. The peaceful depths that Apsu cherished begin to churn with the dreams of younger gods, their visions too powerful to remain hidden in the silent depths. Marduk's presence fills the water around. You like golden light filtering down from a sun that does not yet exist. His consciousness expands through the primordial sea with gentle but irresistible force, bringing with it the first true warmth these waters have ever known. In his growing awareness, you sense the birth of hope itself, the first belief that existence can be improved, that chaos can give way to meaningful order without losing the essential vitality of life. His four eyes open slowly in the depths, each one seeing in a different direction, each one perceiving aspects of reality that remain hidden to lesser awareness. Through his vision, the formless waters begin to reveal their hidden structure, their secret potential for organization and beauty. You feel yourself seen by those cosmic eyes, known and accepted as part of the grand design that is beginning to unfold. His four ears listen to sounds that have never been heard before, the whispered prayers of beings not yet created, the music of spheres not yet set in motion, the laughter of children who will one day play in gardens that exist now only as dreams in the divine imagination. In his listening, you hear the future calling to the present, inviting it to step forward into new forms of existence. The winds of change begin to stir within the waters themselves, Marduk's breath moving through the liquid medium like spirit moving through matter. These are not the harsh winds of destruction, but the gentle breezes of transformation, carrying the scent of possibilities not yet realized, the promise of forms not yet imagined. You let these inner winds carry you deeper into the vision of what is to come. Around you, the other young gods begin to respond to Marduk's awakening presence. Their consciousness brightens like stars emerging from clouds, each one adding its own light to the growing illumination that spreads through the depths. Ea's wisdom flows more clearly now. Damkina's promise of solidity becomes more defined, and the elemental forces begin to stir more actively in their watery dreams. But with this quickening of consciousness comes an intensification of the disturbance that troubles the older generation. Apsu's discomfort grows into something approaching anguish as the noise of youthful activity disrupts the profound silence. He is cherished since the beginning of time. You feel his pain like a deep current of sorrow flowing through the waters, the grief of one who sees a beloved world changing beyond recognition. His decision forms slowly, like ice crystallizing in cold water. The young gods must be stilled, their disruptive energy contained or eliminated before it destroys the perfect peace that has always defined existence. It is not cruelty that motivates him, but desperate love, the desire to preserve something precious that seems to be slipping away forever. In his resolve, you feel the terrible sadness of a parent who believes he must sacrifice his children to save his world. Tiamat's response is more complex, more torn between conflicting loves and loyalties. She feels Apsu's pain as her own, sharing his sorrow at the end of the age of perfect tranquility. Yet she also feels the wild joy of the younger gods, their excitement at the possibilities that stretch before them like an infinite ocean of potential. She is the Great Mother, loving all her children equally, unable to choose between the old and the new. The waters around you begin to divide now, not physically but emotionally. Currents of sympathy flowing in different directions as the cosmic community polarizes around this fundamental choice. Some streams carry the melancholy of those who wish to return to the original silence. Others sparkle with the enthusiasm of those who embrace change and growth. You drift between them, feeling both pulls, understanding both positions. In the depths, Ea's wisdom begins to perceive the approaching crisis. His consciousness expands like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, reaching out to touch the minds of his fellow gods, sharing his understanding of what must come to pass. He sees that this conflict cannot be avoided, that it represents a necessary stage in the evolution of consciousness itself. The old innocence must be sacrificed so that new forms of awareness can be born. With gentle sorrow, Ea begins to act. His response to Apsu's threat is not violent but compassionate, an act of mercy that brings deep sleep rather than destruction. You watch through the dreaming waters as the ancient god of fresh water settles into a slumber, so profound it becomes indistinguishable from peace itself. Apsu's consciousness sinks into depths so quiet that his desire for silence is finally, eternally fulfilled. The waters grow calmer with Apsu's sleep, but it is a different kind of calm now. Not the unconscious tranquility of the beginning, but the conscious peace of resolution. Ea has not destroyed the principle of fresh water, but transformed it, given it a new form that honors its essential nature while allowing for the changes that must come over Apsu's sleeping form. The first foundations of the ordered world begin to take shape. Tiamat's grief flows through the waters like a tide of sorrow, salt tears mixing with salt sea until the boundary between the goddess and her domain dissolves completely. She becomes her element entirely now, no longer a being dwelling in the sea, but the sea itself. vast and powerful, and moved by emotions too deep for any finite consciousness to comprehend. In her mourning, you feel the raw power of maternal love, fierce and protective, and dangerous to any who would threaten her. Children, but her children now include both the old and the new, both the sleeping Apsu and the wakeful young gods who grow stronger with each passing moment. Her love becomes a force of terrible complexity, pulling in all directions at once, unable to find a simple resolution to the conflict that tears at her heart. In this divine anguish, you sense the birth of tragedy itself, the recognition that sometimes love requires choosing between equally precious alternatives. Marduk's response to the crisis is different from his elders. Where they agonize over loss and change, he sees opportunity and growth. His four eyes perceive patterns in the chaos that surrounds Tiamat's grief, structures hidden within the apparent disorder that could become the foundation of something greater than what existed before. His consciousness begins to organize itself for a task greater than any god has yet attempted. The other young gods gather around Marduk's growing presence, like planets forming around a young star. They recognize in him the power that can lead them through this transition, the vision that can transform crisis into creative opportunity. Ea offers his wisdom, Damkina her strength, and the elemental forces their various gifts. Together, they form a coalition of consciousness united around the principle of constructive change. But their unity provokes Tiamat's maternal instincts to new heights of protective fury. If the young gods will not be content to exist peacefully within her embrace, if they insist on imposing their order upon her chaotic abundance, then she will give them chaos beyond their ability to control. Her anger becomes creative, spawning new forms of existence, dedicated to the preservation of the old ways. The waters around you begin to teem with strange new life, beings born from Tiamat's turbulent emotions and shaped by her determination to preserve the primordial freedom. Some are vast and serpentine, moving through the depths with the sinuous power of living tides. Others are fierce and predatory, designed to hunt down and devour any structure that tries to impose itself upon the fluid chaos of the original waters. These children of Tiamat's anger are not evil but necessary, representing the principle that all order must prove itself worthy by, demonstrating its ability to survive challenge and opposition. They are the tests that will strengthen whatever new cosmos emerges from this conflict, the resistance that will ensure only the most viable forms of organization survive to shape the future world. You drift among these chaotic offspring, feeling neither fear nor judgment, recognizing them as part of the same creative process that is bringing forth the ordered cosmos. In their wild beauty, you see the raw energy of life itself, the force that drives all growth and change, the power that prevents existence from falling into static perfection. They are chaos, but chaos in service of a greater harmony. The battle lines are drawn now through the waters around you, not as rigid boundaries, but as currents of intention and purpose. On one side flows the stream of conscious order, led by Marduk's golden presence and supported by the wisdom of the elder young gods. On the other surges the tide of creative chaos, embodied by Tiamat and her fierce offspring, determined to preserve the freedom that gave birth to all existence. But this is not a war as mortals understand war, fought with weapons and marked by hatred. This is a cosmic dance, a ritual of transformation in which opposition serves the purpose of creation. Both sides are necessary. Both contribute essential elements to what will emerge from their conflict. In their opposition, you see the fundamental polarity that will drive all future evolution. Marduk, begins to prepare himself for the confrontation, not by arming for battle, but by expanding his consciousness to encompass possibilities that no god has yet imagined. His 4 eyes see not just what is, but what could be. His 4 ears hear not just present sounds, but the music of futures yet to be composed. His body, still more energy than substance, begins to organize itself according to principles of harmony that will eventually become the laws of physics. The other gods watch in wonder as Marduk transforms himself into something new, something that bridges the gap between chaos and order while maintaining the essential vitality of both. He becomes the principle of dynamic equilibrium, the power that can impose structure without destroying life, that can create form without falling into rigidity. In his transformation, you see the birth of wisdom itself. The waters around you grow luminous now with the approach of the great moment. This is not the harsh light of destruction, but the gentle radiance of dawn, the illumination that reveals rather than destroys, that brings clarity without eliminating mystery. You feel yourself becoming more transparent in this growing light, more able to receive the visions that are about to unfold. Around Marduk, the fundamental forces of the universe begin to organize themselves into their eternal dance. Gravity learns to embrace without crushing. Electromagnetism discovers how to connect while maintaining distinctness. And the strong and weak nuclear forces find their proper balance between binding and release. These are the gods of physics, the divine principles that will govern all material existence, and through it all, the love that first brought consciousness into being continues to flow, now expressing itself not as simple unity, but as the complex harmony that emerges when different forms of awareness learn to dance together in celebration of their mutual existence. You float in this love like a note in a vast symphony, small but essential, temporary but eternal, and through it all, the love that first brought consciousness into being continues to flow, now expressing itself not as simple unity, but as the complex harmony that emerges when different forms of awareness learn to dance together in celebration of their mutual existence. You float in this love like a note in a vast symphony, small but essential, temporary but eternal. The moment of transformation approaches, now like the crest of a great wave building in the depths of the cosmic ocean. You can feel its power gathering, not as destruction, but as the ultimate creative act. The moment when potential becomes actual, when dream becomes reality, when the long conversation between chaos and order finally reaches its first great resolution. Marduk's consciousness expands to encompass all possibilities, his awareness becoming a vast net of light that can catch and hold the raw energy of Tiamat's chaos without destroying its essential vitality. He becomes the great container, the cosmic vessel within which the wild forces of creation can dance their ancient dance while gradually learning new steps, new rhythms, new ways of moving together in his growing presence. You sense the birth of what humans will one day call love, not the unconscious unity of the original waters, but the conscious choice to embrace what is different, to find beauty in diversity, to create harmony from apparent opposition. This is the love that builds rather than merely conserves, that grows rather than merely endures, that reaches always toward greater complexity and beauty. The waters around you begin to sing, now with a music more complex than any that has ever existed. It is the song of transformation itself, the melody that emerges when old forms dissolve and new ones crystallize, when the impossible becomes inevitable, when the eternal dance of creation finds new steps to add to its ancient choreography. You become part of this music, your own small voice joining the cosmic choir. As Marduk's transformation nears completion, the very space around you begins to change. No longer the uniform medium of the original waters, it starts to develop texture and direction, density and flow. Up and down begin to have real meaning as the first gravitational relationships form. Near and far start to matter as distance becomes more than metaphor. Time itself begins to tick with the first regular rhythm the universe has ever known. The confrontation between Marduk and Tiamat approaches not as violence but as a cosmic wedding, a sacred marriage in which apparent opposites unite to create something greater than either could achieve alone. She comes to meet him through the depths, vast and terrible and beautiful, bringing with her all the wild abundance of unconstrained possibility. He rises to meet her, radiant with purpose but gentle in his strength, offering not conquest but partnership. Their meeting sends shockwaves through the waters around you. But these are waves of creation rather than destruction. Where their energies touch, new forms of existence spontaneously emerge. The first stable patterns that can maintain themselves without constant divine attention. The first experiments in what will become the physical laws that govern material reality. You witness the moment when Tiamat's flowing chaos encounters Marduk's organizing light, and instead of cancelling each other out, they achieve a perfect balance. Her energy provides the fuel for his structures, while his patterns give direction to her abundant creativity. Together, they become the cosmic engine that will drive all future evolution, the eternal partnership between freedom and form. In this sacred union, the first boundaries begin to form, not walls that separate, but membranes that define while allowing exchange. The waters above begin to differentiate themselves from the waters below, though both remain part of the same essential substance. Sky and earth start to emerge as distinct realms, though the rivers that flow between them maintain the connection that ensures neither will ever be completely separate from the other. The light that has been building throughout this cosmic drama finally breaks forth, not as harsh illumination, but as the gentle radiance of dawn after the longest night. This is the first sunrise, the moment when the universe opens its eyes and sees itself for the first time. In this light, you see your own reflection in the waters around you, and in that reflection, you recognize both the mortal you are and the divine essence from which you came. The victory is complete now, but it is not the victory of one principle over another. It is the victory of synthesis over division, of creativity over stagnation, of love over fear. Marduk has not destroyed Tiamat, but transformed her, given her chaos a new form that preserves its essential wildness while directing it toward constructive ends. She becomes the material universe itself, vast and abundant and forever creative, while he becomes the consciousness that guides her creativity toward ever greater beauty and complexity. The other gods take their places now in the new cosmic order, each finding a role that expresses their unique gifts while contributing to the greater harmony. Ea becomes the keeper of wisdom, ensuring that knowledge flows freely through all levels of existence. Damkina becomes the foundation of stability, the bedrock upon which all temporary forms can rest secure. The elemental forces find their proper relationships, learning to work together rather than at cross purposes. Around you, the waters begin their final transformation. Some rise to become the sky, carrying with them the dreams of flight and freedom, of infinite space and eternal light. Others settle to become the earth, taking with them the visions of growth and fertility, of solid foundations and patient endurance. Still others remain as the seas and rivers, the eternal mediators between heaven and earth, carrying messages and dreams between the realms. You feel yourself changing too, no longer just a witness to creation, but a participant in it, a consciousness that has been shaped by its journey through the cosmic birth process, and is now ready to take its place in the ordered universe. The divine spark that has always existed within you begins to glow more brightly, connecting you to the great network of awareness that now spans all existence. The first age is ending, the time of pure potential giving way to the era of manifest reality. But the ending is also a beginning, the start of a journey that will lead through countless adventures and discoveries, countless forms of beauty and wonder. You have witnessed the birth of order from chaos, the transformation of possibility into actuality, the first great victory of consciousness over unconsciousness. In the slowly calming waters around you, you sense the presence of gratitude itself, the universe's recognition of what has been accomplished, its appreciation for the sacrifice and struggle that made this transformation possible. Both the old gods and the new have given something precious to create this new reality, and in their giving, they have discovered forms of love deeper than any they had known before. The cosmic dance continues, but now it has direction as well as energy, purpose as well as passion. The eternal conversation between stability and change has found its first great synthesis, creating a framework within which all future evolution can unfold. You have been present at the birth of everything that is, and in that presence, you have discovered your own place in the eternal story of existence. Asterisk, asterisk, dot, 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 asterisk, asterisk. The waters have settled now into their eternal courses, and you drift gently between the realms that Marduk's wisdom has created. Above you stretches the dome of heaven, vast and blue and filled with the promise of stars yet to be kindled. Below you lies the solid earth, dark and fertile and patient, waiting for the seeds of life to take root in its nurturing soil. Around you flow the rivers, eternal mediators carrying the dreams of sky to earth and the prayers of earth to sky. In this newly ordered cosmos, you feel a different quality of peace than existed in the primordial waters. This is not the unconscious tranquility of the beginning, but the conscious serenity of completion. The satisfaction that comes when harmony has been achieved through struggle rather than simply inherited. Every element of creation has found its proper place, its unique role to play in the greater symphony of existence. Marduk's presence fills the space around you now, not as raw power, but as gentle authority. The wisdom that guides without coercing, that leads by example rather than force. His consciousness has become the hidden framework that holds all things in their proper relationships, while allowing each to express its individual nature freely. In his governance, you sense the birth of justice itself, the principle that ensures every being receives what it needs to flourish. The earth beneath. The waters calls to you now with its own soft voice, inviting you to witness the next stage of creation. You let yourself sink through the liquid medium until you rest upon the first solid ground that has ever existed, feeling its stability with wonder and gratitude. This is the foundation that will support all future growth, the bedrock upon which cities will rise and gardens will bloom. The soil is rich and dark, pregnant with possibilities that wait only for the right moment to emerge. You can sense the potential life sleeping within it, not yet plants or animals, but the essence from which both will spring. The vital force that will eventually express itself in countless forms of beauty and complexity. The earth's dreams of forests and meadows, of creatures that will walk upon its surface and roots that will penetrate its depths. Above you, the sky begins its first experiments with light, not the harsh brilliance of raw energy, but the gentle radiance that nourishes rather than burns, that reveals rather than blinds. The first stars begin to kindle in the darkness, each one a thought of the divine mind made visible, each one a promise that light will always return even after the deepest night. These are not the distant, cold stars that mortals will see millennia hence, but young and close and warm, like candles lit in a vast temple. Their light carries with it the qualities of consciousness itself: awareness, intention, purpose, love. You bask in their radiance and feel your own inner light growing brighter in response, connecting you to the great network of illumination that spans all existence. The rivers around you begin to establish their eternal paths now, carving channels through the soft earth with patient persistence. The Euphrates flows with stately grace, its current deep and steady, carrying the dreams of abundance and fertility. The Tigris dances beside it, more playful in its movement, bringing the gifts of change and renewal. Together, they create the pattern that will define this land forever, the marriage of stability and flow, of constancy and transformation. You follow their course as they wind through the emerging landscape, watching as the first deltas form where they meet the sea, as the first marshlands appear where their waters spread and pool. These are the nurseries where life will first learn to bridge the gap between water and land, where the experiments in breathing and walking and growing will begin. In the fertile mud of these marshlands, you sense the stirring of the first primitive forms of life, not yet complex creatures, but simple expressions of the vital force: algae and bacteria, fungi and protozoans, the humble pioneers that will prepare the way for all who come after. Their awakening feels like dawn breaking over the cosmic landscape, the first faint light of biological existence beginning to glow. But this is also the time for consciousness to take more definite forms, for the divine awareness that pervades all existence to focus itself into individual centers of experience. The gods begin to establish their dwelling places now, their sacred cities where mortals will one day come to worship and receive wisdom. Each location is chosen with perfect care, placed where the currents of divine energy flow most clearly. You drift toward the site where Babylon will one day rise, feeling the special quality of this place even in its pristine emptiness. Here, at the center of the world, where the influences of all directions meet and mingle, Marduk establishes his primary temple, his earthly dwelling place. The energy that gathers here is unlike anywhere else, focused and powerful, yet gentle and welcoming. A beacon that will draw seekers from across the known world. ****. The first bricks begin to form now, not shaped by mortal hands, but crystallized directly from the divine intention. They are made of the same clay as the riverbanks, but transformed by consciousness into something greater than mere earth building blocks infused with purpose and meaning. Materials that will endure not just physically but spiritually. Each brick carries within it a fragment of Marduk's own essence, ensuring that the structures built from them will be more than mere buildings. You watch in dreaming wonder as the first ziggurat begins to take shape, rising tier by tier from the fertile plain like a mountain crafted by patient love. Each level represents a different stage of spiritual ascent, a different degree of closeness to the divine presence that dwells at its summit. The ramps that spiral around its sides are pathways for both gods and mortals, routes of communication between heaven and earth. The construction proceeds with cosmic patience, each brick placed with perfect precision, each angle calculated to harmonize with the fundamental patterns that govern all existence. This is architecture as prayer made manifest, engineering as an expression of devotion, building as a form of worship. The ziggurat grows not by addition but by organic unfolding, like a flower blooming in slow motion. As the sacred tower rises, the city begins to form around it. Streets and houses arranging themselves in patterns that reflect the order of the cosmos itself. The main avenues align with the cardinal directions, channels for the flow of divine energy through the urban landscape. The districts organize themselves according to the functions they will serve: areas for trade and governance, for learning and celebration, for the quiet contemplation that nourishes the soul. The walls that will one day surround the city begin as lines of force rather than physical barriers, boundaries defined by consciousness rather than stone. They mark the sacred precinct where divine law holds sway, where justice flows like water through carefully designed channels, where every citizen will find their proper place in the greater harmony. These are not walls of exclusion, but of inclusion, defining not what is kept out, but what is held within. You drift through the slowly materializing city, sensing the roles that different locations will play in the great drama of civilization. Here will stand the palace where earthly kings will learn to channel divine authority with wisdom and compassion. There will rise the schools where scribes will preserve and transmit the sacred knowledge. In that quarter will flourish the markets where goods and ideas from distant lands will mingle and cross-fertilize. The harbor begins to take shape where the city meets the river, its docks and quays designed to welcome vessels from across the known world. This will be the port through which not just trade goods, but stories and songs, techniques and philosophies, dreams and visions will flow into the heart of civilization. The harbor represents the city's openness to the wider world, its recognition that true wisdom requires the marriage of many. Different streams of understanding. Gardens begin to appear throughout the urban landscape, not as afterthoughts, but as integral parts of the city's design. These are the lungs through which Babylon will breathe, the spaces where the wild vitality of nature will be welcomed into the heart of human civilization. Here fruit trees will shade contemplative paths. Flowers will perfume the air with reminders of divine beauty, and fountains will sing with voices borrowed from the eternal rivers. The library begins to crystallize near the center of the city, its walls destined to hold the accumulated wisdom of ages, not yet filled with tablets and scrolls, but already pregnant with the knowledge that will one day fill its halls. It represents humanity's commitment to memory and learning, to preserving the insights of each generation for those who will come after. In its emptiness, you sense the presence of all the stories yet to be written, all the discoveries yet to be made. Near the library, the first law courts begin to take shape, places where Marduk's gift of justice will be administered with care and wisdom. These halls represent the transformation of divine principle into practical governance, the translation of cosmic order into human institutions. Here the weak will find protection and the strong will learn responsibility. Here disputes will be resolved through reason rather than force. The first schools arrange themselves like satellites around the great ziggurat, places where the young will learn not just practical skills, but the sacred knowledge that connects human life to divine purpose. In these halls, the art of writing will be taught as a holy craft, the preservation of knowledge treated as a religious duty. Students will learn to see themselves as servants of truth, custodians of the wisdom that makes civilization possible. Throughout the emerging city, shrines and temples begin to appear, each dedicated to a different aspect of divine consciousness. Some honor the gods of the elements. Others celebrate the deities of human activities, love and war, healing and harvest, birth and death. Together, they create a sacred geography that maps the full spectrum of divine presence, ensuring that every aspect of existence receives proper recognition and reverence. The process of creation continues with dreamlike fluidity, each new structure emerging naturally from those that came before. There is no haste here, no urgency to complete the work quickly. This is creation as meditation, building as a form of prayer, the slow and patient crafting of perfection from the raw materials of possibility. Every stone is placed with love, every beam set with reverence. You feel yourself becoming part of this great work, your consciousness contributing to the collective vision that is bringing Babylon into existence. You are not just witnessing creation, but participating in it, adding your own small thread to the great tapestry being woven from dreams and intention, hope and determination. In your participation, you discover the joy of purposeful action, the satisfaction of contributing to something greater than yourself. The sun begins to set over the emerging city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that reflect off the polished surfaces of the first completed buildings. But this is not an ending, but a beginning, the close of the first day in a story that will continue for millennia. As darkness gently covers the sacred precinct, the first lamps are lit in the windows, creating a constellation of earthly stars to mirror those in heaven. In the growing twilight, you can hear the first sounds of human habitation beginning to echo through the streets, voices calling to one another in friendship, children's laughter echoing from the gardens, the gentle splash of oars as the first boats navigate the harbor. These are not yet physical sounds, but the promises of sounds to come, the intentions that will eventually manifest as the full symphony of urban life. The city sleeps now in its perfect incompleteness. Dream Babylon resting in the embrace of divine love before taking on the solid reality that will make it the wonder of the ancient world. In its sleeping, you see the promise of all that civilization can become when guided by wisdom and justice, when built on the foundation of recognition that all existence is sacred, all life is precious, all consciousness is connected to the divine source from which it springs. ... Asterisk. Time flows like honey through the sacred precincts of Uru, and you find yourself drifting forward through the centuries, carried by currents of story and dream, toward a moment when gods and mortals walk the earth together. The city has grown magnificent around you, its walls rising like cliffs from the fertile plain, its gardens breathing perfume into the warm evening air. Here, where civilization has learned to dance with divine purpose, a new tale begins to unfold. You rest now in the shadows of the great temple, feeling the presence of one whose name will echo through the ages like thunder rolling across distant mountains. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, carries within his powerful frame the tensions that define the human condition. In his restless heart, you sense both the longing for transcendence and the weight of earthly responsibility, both the desire for eternal glory and the fear of ineffable mortality. His footsteps echo through the palace halls as he paces in the pre-dawn darkness, unable to find rest in sleep. The crown weighs heavy on his brow, not from gold and precious stones, but from the burden of leadership, the constant awareness that his decisions shape the lives of thousands. Yet beneath this noble responsibility burns a wilder fire, the untamed spirit that calls him toward adventures beyond the safe boundaries of civilized life. You watch him through the dreaming darkness as he stands on the palace roof, gazing out over his sleeping city. The walls he built stretch away into the night, protecting his people but also confining him, defining the limits of the known world while hinting at mysteries that lie beyond. His hands, strong enough to wrestle lions, gentle enough to comfort children, clench and unclench as he struggles with desires he cannot name. The goddess Araru, she who shaped the first humans from river clay, stirs in her divine workshop as the prayers of Uruk's people reach her ears. They love their king but fear his restless energy, his need for challenges worthy of his superhuman strength. Their voices rise like incense through the layers of reality, carrying pleas for someone who can match Gilgamesh's power, someone who can provide the companionship his great heart craves. In response to these prayers, her divine hands begin their ancient work, gathering clay from the banks of the Euphrates where the river runs deepest and clearest. This is not ordinary earth, but the primal substance from which consciousness first learned to inhabit physical form. Each grain holds the memory of creation. Each particle carries the potential for new forms of life and awareness. The clay grows warm beneath her touch, responsive to the divine intention that shapes it like a master sculptor working with living stone. But this creation is different from any that has come before, where the first humans were formed to tend gardens and serve gods. This new being is crafted for wildness, for the untamed spaces where civilization has never set foot. He will be the bridge between the world of cities and the realm of nature, between human culture and animal wisdom. You drift closer to witness this sacred birth, feeling the electric anticipation that fills the air as consciousness prepares to inhabit a new form. The clay figure takes shape beneath Aru's patient hands, tall and powerful like Gilgamesh, but carrying himself with the fluid grace of creatures who have never known walls or boundaries. His body will be a temple to physical perfection, every muscle and sinew crafted for strength and endurance and the pure. Joy of movement. Hair grows thick upon his head and body, not as ornament but as connection to the wild world that will be his first home. It flows like grass in summer wind, like manes of lions, like the untamed growth of forests where no axe has ever fallen. In its abundance, you see the symbol of life lived according to natural law rather than human custom. Existence guided by instinct and season rather than duty and ambition. The breath of life enters this clay form gently, like morning mist settling on meadow grass. But this is not the civilized breath that fills the lungs of city dwellers, tamed by walls and customs. This is the wild wind that sweeps across steppes and mountains, carrying the scents of all growing things, the sounds of all creatures, the whispers of all weather. With this breath comes not knowledge of laws and letters, but deep communion with the rhythms that govern all natural life. Enkidu opens his eyes for the first time in a glade where ancient oaks cast dappled shadows on grass that has never known the plough. Sunlight filters through leaves with the gentleness of divine benediction, warming his skin as he rises to stand on legs that know instinctively how to carry him through any terrain. The animals of the forest gather around him without fear, recognizing in him a brother who speaks their wordless language of presence and awareness. You follow his first steps through the awakening forest, watching as he learns the ways of his new world. Deer teach him which plants are sweet and nourishing. Wolves show him how to read the stories written in scent and track. Birds demonstrate the art of finding fresh water even in the driest seasons. Every creature becomes his teacher, every moment of wilderness life a lesson in the wisdom that exists beyond human understanding. He runs with the gazelles across endless grasslands, his human intelligence married to animal grace, his divine strength tempered by the gentle patience that governs all natural rhythms. His laughter echoes across the steppes like the call of wild geese, joyful and free, untainted by the complexities that shadow the hearts of those who dwell within walls. In his happiness, you glimpse what humanity might have been if it had never chosen the path of civilization. But even in this paradise of natural living, you sense the approaching change that will transform everything. The threads of fate, woven by hands more ancient than memory, draw slowly tighter around both the wild man and the king. Their destinies call to each other across the miles that separate forest from city, like songs in harmony even before the singers meet. The first sign comes when Enkidu encounters the traps and snares left by hunters from the world of men. His innocent destruction of these devices, motivated by compassion for the creatures they would capture, sets in motion the chain of events that will bring him face to face with civilization. The hunters return to find their work undone, their prey protected by someone whose strength exceeds any human they have ever known. Word travels slowly from the wilderness to the city, carried by merchants and travelers, growing in the telling until it reaches the ears of those who dwell in palaces. Stories of a wild man who runs with beasts, whose strength rivals that of heroes, whose appearance marks the boundary where civilization meets the untamed world. In Uruk, Gilgamesh hears these tales with growing fascination, sensing in them the answer to longings he has never been able to articulate. The dreams begin then, visions that visit both king and wild man in the quiet hours before dawn. Gilgamesh sees himself struggling with a mighty opponent whose strength matches his own, feels the strange joy of meeting another who can challenge his power without being destroyed by it. Enkidu dreams of walls and towers, of beings who walk upright but have forgotten how to listen to the wind, who possess knowledge but have lost wisdom. In the sacred groves, where priestesses tend the temples of Ishtar, preparations begin for the encounter that will change both lives forever. Shamhat, wise in the ways of love and transformation, accepts the task of bridging the gap between wildness and civilization. Her mission is not conquest but invitation, not to destroy Enkidu's natural wisdom but to expand it, to show him that consciousness can grow through connection with others who share the gift of awareness. You drift beside her as she journeys into the wilderness, carried not by horse or chariot but by the currents of destiny itself. Her presence brings a different quality to the wild places. She passes through, not the harsh intrusion of those who come to take and tame, but the gentle influence of one who comes to give and receive an equal measure. The animals do not flee from her approach, but watch with curious eyes, sensing in her the same divine spark that animates their wild brother. The meeting takes place beside a waterhole where many paths converge, where the tracks of countless creatures create a mandala in the mud, speaking of the interconnection that binds all life together. Here, where water reflects the sky and earth meets heaven in the shimmering surface, two forms of human consciousness encounter each other for the first time. Enkidu's wild freedom meets Shamhat's civilized wisdom, and in their union, something new is born. The transformation that follows is gentle as sunrise, profound as the changing of seasons. Through 7 days and nights, Enkidu learns what it means to be fully human, to carry within a single heart both the wildness of nature and the consciousness that can contemplate its own existence. He discovers that civilization need not mean the death of natural wisdom, that knowledge can enhance rather than replace, the deep intuition that connects all living things. When he rises from this sacred instruction, he is no longer the pure child of nature who first opened his eyes in the forest grove, but neither has he become a tamed creature robbed of his essential wildness. Instead, he embodies a new synthesis, a being who can walk equally in both worlds, who can serve as bridge between the realm of instinct and the kingdom of conscious purpose. In his transformed presence, you see the promise of what humanity might become when it learns to honor both its animal nature and its divine potential. The animals sense the change in him and withdraw, not in rejection, but in recognition that his path now leads toward a different destiny. They have been his teachers in the first school of existence, but graduation means moving on to new lessons, new challenges, new opportunities for growth. Their parting is without sorrow, filled instead with the quiet satisfaction that comes when a student is ready to exceed his teachers. Enkidu turns his face toward Uruk now, drawn by dreams of the king whose restless energy matches his own, whose strength might finally provide the companionship his great heart craves. In his eyes, you see the birth of friendship itself, the recognition that consciousness grows richer when it finds its mirror in another soul, that even the strongest among us are incomplete until we discover the one who can stand beside us as equal and complement. The journey to the city passes like a meditation, each step carrying him deeper into the world of human purpose and meaning. The grasslands give way to cultivated fields, the wild paths to maintained roads, the silence of nature to the distant sounds of human activity. But he moves through these changes without fear, carrying within himself the peace that comes from knowing one's place in the greater pattern, one's role in the unfolding story of existence. As the walls of Uruk rise before him in the distance, massive and impressive as mountains, you feel the anticipation that fills the air like the electric charge before a thunderstorm. Two great forces are about to meet, two forms of excellence about to discover each other. In their approaching encounter, you sense the beginning of a friendship that will become legend, a bond that will define what it means for conscious beings to truly know and love one another. The city gates stand open like welcoming arms, and through them, destiny calls to destiny. Greatness summons greatness, and the eternal story of human connection prepares to write its most beautiful chapter. In the growing light of dawn, Enkidu takes his first steps into the world of civilization, carrying with him the gifts of the wilderness and the promise of transformation for all he will meet. Asterisk, asterisk. The friendship that blooms between Gilgamesh and Enkidu grows like a river fed by mountain springs, deepening with each passing day until it becomes the strongest force in both their lives. You watch from the shadows of the palace gardens as they test each other's strength in contests that are more dance than battle, their wrestling matches becoming conversations in the language of bodies, perfectly matched in power and grace. In their companionship, you witness the birth of something precious and rare, two souls recognizing their perfect complement in each other. Where Gilgamesh brings the fire of ambition and the weight of responsibility, Enkidu offers the cooling wisdom of natural patience and the grounding influence of one who has known perfect contentment. Together, they create a harmony that neither could achieve alone, a music of friendship that resonates through the very stones of Uruk. Yet even in the midst of this newfound brotherhood, the restless energy that defines Gilgamesh's nature continues to stir. The daily routines of kingship, the familiar challenges of governing a great city, begin to feel confining to his spirit enlarged by friendship. He paces the palace halls at night, his mind turning toward horizons beyond the safe boundaries of civilization, toward adventures worthy of two heroes united in common purpose. The answer comes to him in dreams filled with towering trees that reach toward heaven, like green pillars supporting the sky itself. The cedar forest calls to his imagination, that distant realm where the gods have placed their sacred groves, where trees older than memory grow in groves so dense that sunlight becomes a rare and precious gift filtering through the canopy. Here, in this holy wilderness, dwells Humbaba, the guardian appointed by Enlil to protect the divine forest from mortal intrusion. You drift with Gilgamesh's dreaming consciousness toward this legendary realm, feeling the pull of adventure that draws heroes beyond the comfortable boundaries of the known world. The cedar forest exists at the edge of mortal understanding, a place where the natural world remains as pure as it was on the first day of creation, where every tree is a prayer made manifest in wood and leaf and resin that carries the fragrance of paradise itself. In the early morning light, Gilgamesh shares his vision with Enkidu, speaking of the glory that awaits them in the heart of the sacred forest. His words paint pictures of cedar beams that could build temples lasting for millennia, of timber so precious it could make Uruk the wonder of all nations. But beneath the practical arguments, you sense the deeper hunger that drives him, the need to test himself against challenges worthy of his heroic nature, to prove that friendship can accomplish what solitary strength never could. Enkidu's response carries the wisdom of one who has known the forest's moods, who has felt the weight of ancient trees and understood the sacred nature of wild places. He speaks softly of Humbaba, describing not a monster, but a force of nature itself, a guardian whose strength flows from the earth that nurtured the first growth, whose voice carries the authority of winds that have blown since the beginning of time. In his gentle warnings, you hear not cowardice, but the respect that all wise creatures show toward powers greater than themselves. Yet even as he counsels caution, you sense Enkidu's growing excitement at the prospect of the journey. The wild places call to something deep in his nature, awakening memories of the freedom he knew before civilization claimed him. The thought of walking once more through forests where human foot has rarely trod, of breathing air unpolluted by the smoke of cities, stirs longings in his heart that friendship alone cannot satisfy. The preparations begin with the solemnity of sacred ritual, for this is not merely an expedition but a pilgrimage toward transcendence. In the temple workshops, master craftsmen labor over weapons worthy of heroes, forging bronze that will hold its edge against any foe, binding hilts with leather blessed by priests and priestesses. Each axe and sword becomes a prayer made tangible, a tool sanctified for use in divine service. The great axes they create are not mere instruments of destruction but symbols of purpose refined to its essence. Each blow carries the weight of two heroes united in common cause. Each swing channels the power of friendship transformed into action. You watch as the metal glows in the forge fires, feeling the intention being hammered into every fold of the bronze, the determination being tempered into every edge. Shamash, the sun god whose light reveals all hidden things, blesses their undertaking with his golden approval. His rays seem to gather around the two friends as they make their offerings in his temple, promising guidance through the trackless wilderness and protection against the perils that await in the sacred forest. In his blessing, you feel the recognition that some adventures serve purposes greater than personal glory, that some journeys lead toward wisdom that benefits all who hear their stories. The elders of Uruk gather to offer counsel and blessing, their ancient voices carrying the weight of accumulated wisdom and the tremor of fear for these young men who would challenge forces beyond mortal understanding. They speak of the proper rituals for appeasing forest spirits, of the signs that indicate divine favor or displeasure, of the importance of approaching sacred places with humility rather than presumption. Yet even their warnings cannot diminish the excitement that builds around the expedition. The younger citizens of Uruk see in their king's quest an expression of the heroic spirit that makes life worth living, the courage to reach beyond the merely safe toward the genuinely transformative. Their enthusiasm flows through the city streets like wine, intoxicating everyone it touches with dreams of glory and achievement. The departure comes with the rising of the sun, golden light streaming through the city gates, as if Shamash himself leads the way into the wilderness beyond. The two friends stride out side by side, their weapons gleaming, their spirits high with the anticipation of challenges worthy of their combined strength. Behind them, the prayers of an entire city rise like incense, carrying hopes and fears in equal measure. You follow their path as it leads away from the cultivated fields and maintained roads into the trackless wilderness where maps become useless and only the sun provides reliable guidance. The landscape changes gradually around them, tamed nature giving way to wild growth, the ordered patterns of civilization dissolving into the ancient chaos that existed before humans learned to impose their will upon the world. Each day brings them deeper into the realm of the untamed, where every stream must be forded with care, every hilltop climbed to scout the path ahead, every night's camp chosen with awareness of the creatures that hunt in darkness. Yet the challenges only strengthen the bond between them, each obstacle overcome becoming another verse in the song of their friendship, another proof that together they can face anything the world might offer. The nights are filled with conversations that range across all the topics that matter to conscious beings: the nature of courage, the meaning of glory, the mystery of mortality, the value of love. Around their campfire, you listen as they explore the depths of their own hearts, sharing fears and hopes with the honesty that only perfect trust makes possible. In their words, you hear the eternal questions that define the human condition, spoken with the clarity that comes from lives lived at the edge of great adventure. Enkidu speaks of his memories of pure wildness, of the time when every moment was sufficient unto itself, when the future held no fears because consciousness lived entirely in the eternal present. His voice carries a note of nostalgia for that lost innocence, but also gratitude for the complexity that friendship has brought to his existence. In loving Gilgamesh, he has discovered dimensions of experience unavailable to solitary creatures, depths of meaning that emerge only through connection with another soul. Gilgamesh shares his struggles with the burden of kingship, the loneliness that comes from being responsible for so many lives, the fear that his reign will be forgotten like so many others that came before. In the darkness illuminated by flickering flames, he reveals the vulnerable heart beneath the heroic exterior, the mortal concerns that coexist with divine ambitions. Through his honesty, you understand that even kings need friends, that power without companionship becomes merely another form of prison. Asterisk. The forest begins to announce itself long before they reach its boundaries. The air grows thick with the scent of resin and growing wood, carrying fragrances that speak of trees so ancient they remember the first rains, so tall they brush against the lowest clouds. Birds with songs unlike any heard near human habitations call from hidden perches, their voices weaving melodies that seem to carry messages in languages older than words. when the cedar forest finally appears on the horizon. It rises like a green wall between earth and sky, so vast that its edges disappear beyond the reach of vision, so dense that its depths remain shrouded in mystery. The trees stand in perfect ranks, like soldiers of some divine army, their trunks straight and strong, their branches interlaced to form a canopy that transforms sunlight into 100 shades of emerald and gold. At the forest's edge, they pause to prepare themselves for the sacred encounter that awaits. This is the threshold between the mortal world and the realm of the gods, the boundary where human will must humble itself before powers that predate civilization by countless ages. The very air seems to thicken with ancient presence, with the accumulated wisdom of trees that have weathered storms, droughts, and the passing of millennia without losing their essential strength. Enkidu kneels to place his palm against the earth, feeling for the great heartbeat that pulses through all growing things, seeking permission from the forest itself to enter its sacred precincts. His wild upbringing has taught him the courtesy due to places where the gods still walk, the respect that must be shown to guardians who have protected holy sites since the beginning of time. Gilgamesh stands, with his face turned toward the forest depths, feeling the challenge that radiates from the green shadows like heat from a forge. Here dwells Humbaba, the appointed guardian whose strength flows from the earth itself, whose voice can summon storms and earthquakes, whose gaze can turn mortal hearts to stone. Yet, in the hero's eyes, you see not fear but anticipation, the joy of a warrior who has finally found an opponent worthy of his greatest effort. They enter the forest together, walking side by side into the green cathedral where every step echoes with the weight of destiny. The trees close around them like the arms of ancient priests, offering both blessing and warning, welcoming them into the sacred space while reminding them of the reverence due to powers beyond their understanding. In the filtered light that falls like benediction through the canopy, the greatest adventure of their friendship begins to unfold. The path ahead leads deeper into mystery, toward the heart of the forest where Humbaba waits in his cedar throne room, guardian of secrets that mortals were never meant to know. Yet the two friends walk forward without hesitation, bound together by loyalty that makes any challenge bearable, any danger merely another test of the love that defines their brotherhood. The path ahead leads deeper into mystery, toward the heart of the forest where Humbaba waits in his cedar throne room, guardian of secrets that mortals were never meant to know. Yet the two friends walk forward without hesitation, bound together by loyalty that makes any challenge bearable, any danger merely another test of the love that defines their brotherhood. The deeper they venture into the sacred groves, the more the forest reveals its ancient personality. Each tree seems to possess its own consciousness, its own awareness of the mortals who dare to walk among its roots. The cedars tower overhead like living pillars supporting a roof of interwoven branches, their bark scarred by centuries of storms, yet smooth to the touch, warm with the life that flows through their mighty hearts. Shafts of sunlight filter down through the canopy in cathedral beams, illuminating motes of pollen and forest dust that dance in the golden air like tiny spirits celebrating the presence of the living. The light itself seems different here, older and more purposeful, carrying with it the blessing of Shamash, but transformed by its passage through leaves that have been praying to the sun since before human cities rose from riverside mud. The silence is profound yet alive with subtle sounds, the whisper of wind through needle and branch, the distant call of birds whose songs have never been heard outside these sacred groves. the soft percussion of pine cones falling to earth with the weight of unspoken promises. This is not the empty quiet of abandoned places, but the full silence of locations where every sound has meaning, where even the rustle of leaves against leaves carries messages for those who know how to listen as they walk. Enkidu's senses remain alert to every nuance of the forest's mood. His wild upbringing serves him well here, allowing him to read the subtle signs that warn of approaching weather, of animal presence, of the sacred boundaries that should not be crossed without proper preparation. He guides their path away from the most holy groves, those places where the trees grow so close together that even the wind cannot pass between them, where the very air shimmers with concentrated divine presence. Gilgamesh moves with different awareness, his king's mind cataloguing the incredible wealth that surrounds them. Each cedar could provide timber for a dozen palaces, wood so perfect it would last for millennia without decay. The resin that oozes from ancient bark carries fragrances that could perfume temples throughout the known world. Yet even as he calculates the practical value of what they see, you sense his growing understanding that this place represents something far more precious than mere resources. The forest floor beneath their feet is soft with the accumulation of centuries, layer upon layer of fallen needles, creating a carpet that muffles their footsteps and releases the scent of eternal autumn with each step. Hidden beneath this organic blanket, the roots of the great trees interweave in patterns too complex for mortal minds to follow, creating an underground network that connects each cedar to every other, making the entire forest into a single vast organism breathing with unified purpose. Small streams emerge from hidden springs and disappear into mysterious destinations, their waters crystal clear and cold with the taste of stone and sky. These are not the familiar rivers of the civilized world, but the secret arteries through which the forest's life flows, carrying nutrients and messages between the trees, maintaining the perfect balance that has existed here since the gods first planted the sacred seeds. As they penetrate deeper into the green maze, the presence of Humbaba begins to make itself known in subtle ways. The air grows thicker, charged with an energy that makes their skin tingle and their hair stand on end. The normal sounds of forest life gradually fade until even the birds fall silent, leaving only the whisper of wind through branches and the soft percussion of their own heartbeats. This is the approach to the Guardian's domain, the outer boundary of power that has protected these groves since time began. The trees themselves seem to lean inward here, their branches forming a natural corridor that leads inevitably toward the heart of the forest. Each step forward requires more effort, not because of physical obstacles, but because of the increasing weight of divine presence, the growing awareness that they approach powers that dwarf even their heroic strength. Yet neither friend shows any inclination to turn back, their determination only strengthened by the magnitude of the challenge they face. Enkidu pauses frequently now to press his ear against the bark of ancient trees, listening to the slow conversations they conduct in languages of sap and season, growth and rest. Through their wooden words, he begins to understand the nature of Humbaba's guardianship, the way the forest's protector has become one with the life he serves. His consciousness expanded to encompass every tree, every creature, every drop of water within his domain. The Guardian's presence begins to manifest more directly as they approach the center of his realm. The wind carries his voice, not as words, but as meaning that speaks directly to their hearts, warning them of the presumption in their approach, questioning their right to disturb the peace that has reigned here since the world was young. Yet in his warnings, you also sense curiosity. perhaps even a hint of longing for contact with beings who possess the courage to seek him out. Ancient markers begin to appear along their path, stones carved with symbols older than writing, trees whose bark bears scars that form patterns too regular to be natural, clearings arranged in geometric shapes that speak of intelligence far older and more patient than human understanding. These are the boundaries within boundaries, the sacred mathematics that define the most holy spaces within an already sanctified realm. The very light begins to change as they approach Humbaba's dwelling place, taking on qualities that exist nowhere else in the mortal world. It flows like liquid gold between the tree trunks, pooling in clearings and streaming along pathways with purposeful direction. This is illumination as conscious force, light that serves not merely to reveal but to bless, to transform, to prepare those who walk within it for encounters beyond ordinary experience. When they finally reach the heart of the forest, the sight that greets them surpasses even their heroic imaginations. Here, in a circular clearing where the greatest cedars form a natural amphitheater, stands a structure that is both building and living tree, both temple and forest grove. The walls are formed by cedar trunks grown together with such perfect precision that no mortar is needed to seal the joints, while the roof is the interwoven canopy of their branches. Living architecture that continues to grow and change with each passing season. At the center of this organic temple sits Humbaba himself, not the monster of fearful imagination, but a being of such perfect integration with his forest realm that the boundary between guardian and guarded has long since dissolved. His form seems carved from the same wood as the trees around him, his beard flowing like Spanish moss, his eyes holding depths that reflect the accumulated wisdom of millennia spent in perfect communion with the growing world. His voice, when he finally speaks, carries the resonance of wind through cathedral branches, the authority of roots that have drunk from the deepest springs, the patience of seasons that have circled through countless cycles of growth and rest. He does not threaten, but questions, not with hostility, but with the careful attention of one who must understand the hearts of those who would disturb his eternal vigil. In this moment of first encounter, you sense the delicate balance upon which everything depends. Here, where mortal ambition meets divine guardianship, where heroic courage faces ancient wisdom, where the friendship of two extraordinary beings prepares to be tested against powers that have shaped the world itself. The next movement in the eternal dance between order and wildness prepares to unfold. The forest holds its breath, waiting to see what form this meeting will take, whether it will bring destruction or transformation, whether the heroes will learn the deeper lessons that only such encounters can teach. In the charged silence before words are spoken and choices made, all possibilities remain open. All outcomes wait to be determined by the quality of heart and mind that the two friends bring to this sacred confrontation. The encounter with Humbaba passes like a dream within a dream, its resolution bringing both triumph and sorrow to the two friends who have dared to challenge the ancient order. You drift with them as they return to Uruk, their arms full of cedar wood, yet their hearts heavy with the weight of what they have learned about the price of heroic ambition. The forest's blessing follows them, but so does the shadow of consequences that will reshape their understanding of mortality and divine will. In the palace gardens, where fountains sing with voices borrowed from distant rivers, Gilgamesh paces beneath stars that seem dimmer now, their light filtered through the veil of new awareness. The cedar beams they brought from the sacred forest glow with their own inner radiance, filling the air with fragrances that speak of eternal growth and patient wisdom. Yet even their beauty cannot dispel the growing sense that their victory has set in motion forces beyond their control. The goddess Ishtar comes to Gilgamesh with love in her eyes and proposals of divine marriage on her lips, offering him a place among the immortals and power beyond mortal dreams. But the king, wise now in ways that heroic strength alone could never teach, sees beneath her beauty the terrible hunger that consumes those who mistake possession for love. His refusal, gentle but firm, sends ripples of consequence spreading through the divine realm like stones cast into still water. The bull of heaven descends in response to wounded divine pride, its hooves shaking the very foundations of the earth as it rampages through the streets of Uruk. You watch from the safety of dreams as the two friends face this ultimate test of their partnership, their combined strength barely sufficient to overcome the fury of divine retribution made manifest. Yet even in victory, you sense the approach of tragedy, the weight of destiny pressing down upon them like storm clouds gathering on a clear horizon. Enkidu's death comes gently, like evening settling over a peaceful landscape. Yet its impact shatters Gilgamesh's world more thoroughly than any earthquake could destroy a city. You drift beside the grieving king as he holds his friend's cooling body, feeling the first cold touch of mortality's reality penetrating the armor of heroic confidence. In his tears, you witness the birth of the deepest questions that consciousness can ask. Why must love end? What lies beyond the boundary of mortal existence? Is there any meaning in achievements that death renders temporary? The funeral pyre burns through the night like a star fallen to earth, its flames carrying Enkidu's spirit toward whatever realm awaits the souls of heroes. Yet for Gilgamesh, watching from the circle of mourners, the fire's light illuminates not hope but the terrible brevity of all earthly bonds. The king who has conquered cities and slain monsters finds himself defeated by the one enemy that no mortal strength can overcome, the inexorable passage of time that reduces all achievements to memory, all love to grief. In the days that follow, sleep becomes impossible for the grieving king. He wanders the palace halls like a ghost haunting the scene of its former life, unable to find peace in any activity that once brought joy. The crown weighs heavier on his brow now, not with responsibility alone, but with the knowledge that all kingdoms crumble, all reigns end, all glory fades into the dust from which it arose. The heroic fire that once burned bright within his heart gutters now in the cold wind of mortality's truth. The decision forms slowly, like crystal growing in a supersaturated solution, inevitable once the proper conditions align. If death is the fate of all mortals, then Gilgamesh must transcend mortality itself, must find the secret of eternal life that will reunite him with his lost friend and preserve their bond beyond the reach of time. The quest for immortality becomes his new obsession, driving him beyond the boundaries of the known world toward mysteries that even the gods approach with reverence and fear. Utnapishtim calls to him across the vast distances, the survivor of the great flood whose story holds the key to understanding how mortals might escape the universal sentence of death. His name whispers through Gilgamesh's dreams like wind through reeds, carrying promises of wisdom purchased at the price of unimaginable loss. To reach him, the grieving king must journey beyond the edge of the world, through realms where sunlight never falls, and where the very laws of existence bend beneath the weight of primordial forces. You follow Gilgamesh as he begins this final quest, watching as he strips away the external marks of kingship, crown and royal robes, guards and ceremony, reducing himself to the essential core of seeking consciousness. Dressed in the skins of lions he has slain, he becomes a creature of the borderlands, neither fully civilized nor entirely wild, carrying within himself the lessons learned through friendship while pursuing mysteries that must be faced in absolute solitude. Path leads through desert places where the sun burns with merciless intensity and the nights bring cold that penetrates to the bone. Here, where the familiar markers of human habitation disappear entirely, he encounters the first guardians of the deep mysteries, the scorpion beings who watch over the gates of the underworld, whose wisdom extends back to the foundation of the cosmos itself. Their challenge is not physical but spiritual, testing his resolve to continue when every step forward leads deeper into realms where mortal consciousness was never meant to venture. Through their gates lies the tunnel of the sun, the underground passage through which light travels during the hours of darkness, maintaining the eternal cycle that brings dawn to the world above. For 12 hours, Gilgamesh walks in absolute darkness, guided only by the certainty that forward movement is the only alternative to surrender. The air grows thick with the weight of earth above and eternity around, while echoes of his footsteps return from distances so vast they might be measuring the size of the universe itself. When he finally emerges into light again, it is not the familiar illumination of the mortal world, but the strange radiance of the realm where gods and spirits dwell. Here grows the garden of precious stones, where trees bear fruit of emerald and sapphire, where flowers bloom in colors that have no names because mortal eyes have never seen their like. This is the threshold between the world of time and the realm of eternity, where the rules that govern ordinary existence begin to blur and bend. Sidur. I greets him here, the divine barmaid whose tavern stands at the edge of all maps, whose wine carries the flavor of every grape that has ever grown and every joy that mortals have ever tasted. Her eyes hold compassion deeper than oceans as she listens to his tale of loss and longing, his desperate need to find the secret that will restore what death has taken. Yet her counsel carries the gentle sorrow of one who has watched countless seekers pursue the impossible, driven by love too deep to accept the limitations that define mortal existence. Asterisk, asterisk, her words flow like wine mixed with tears, sweet with sympathy yet bitter with truth. She speaks of the beauty found in accepting life's temporary nature, of the joy that comes from loving fully despite knowing that all love must end, of the peace that emerges when consciousness learns to find meaning in the journey, rather than demanding permanence from the destination. Her wisdom is ancient and kind, offering healing for wounds that cannot be cured through heroic action alone. Yet Gilgamesh presses forward, driven by grief that has become a form of love, by determination that refuses to accept defeat even when victory seems to require the impossible. Siduri, recognizing in him the rare soul whose destiny leads beyond ordinary human limitations, guides him toward the ferryman Yershanabi, whose boat can cross the waters that separate the realm of the living from the dwelling place of those who have transcended death itself. The crossing takes place upon waters that reflect not sky but the depths of possibility itself, currents that flow backward through time toward the source from which all stories spring. You drift beside the small boat as it navigates these metaphysical seas, feeling the weight of accumulated legend, the density of meaning that builds when consciousness approaches the ultimate mysteries. Each ripple on the water's surface carries the echo of every prayer ever offered, every hope ever cherished, every dream of transcendence ever pursued by mortal hearts. Utnapishtim waits on the far shore like a patriarch from the world's morning, his ancient eyes holding the memory of the time when gods walked openly among mortals, when the boundary between divine and human remained permeable to those whose hearts carried sufficient wisdom and courage. His dwelling stands at the confluence of all waters, where the rivers of memory and possibility merge into the single stream from which all existence flows. His story unfolds like a scroll written in languages older than civilization, telling of the time when divine patience finally exhausted itself with human folly. When the gods decided to cleanse the world with water and begin again with creatures more worthy of the gift of consciousness, he speaks of the warning that came to him through dreams and omens, of the great boat built according to divine specifications, of the animals gathered in pairs to preserve the seed of life through the coming deluge. You listen through Gilgamesh's ears as Utnapishtim describes the flood itself, not as punishment but as mercy, the universe's way of washing clean what had become corrupted beyond redemption. For 7 days and nights the waters rose, covering mountains and valleys alike, returning the world to the primal state of undifferentiated potential from which new forms of order could emerge. The rain fell like tears shed by gods who loved their creation too much to let it continue in degradation. When the waters finally receded and the boat came to rest upon dry land, Utnapishtim became the bridge between the old world and the new, the living link connecting the age of direct divine communication with the era of human independence and responsibility. The gods, moved by his faithful service and the loyalty that had preserved life itself through the universal catastrophe, granted him the gift of immortality, not as reward for heroic achievement, but as recognition of love so deep it had chosen preservation over personal safety in his tale. Gilgamesh hears both hope and warning. Immortality exists, but it comes not through conquest or cleverness, but through service to purposes greater than individual desire. The secret he seeks cannot be stolen or earned through strength alone, but must be received as gift from those whose perspective encompasses consequences beyond mortal understanding. His quest has brought him to the source of the mystery, but the answer he finds challenges every assumption upon which his heroic identity has been built. Yet Utnapishtim, moved by compassion for this grieving king who has traveled so far in pursuit of reunion with his beloved friend, offers one final test, a challenge that might prove Gilgamesh worthy of the transformation he seeks. If the king can remain awake for 7 days and nights, demonstrating mastery over the small death that is sleep, he might prove himself capable of overcoming the greater death that claims all mortal flesh. The attempt begins with confidence born of heroic determination, but the accumulated exhaustion of grief and travel soon claims its due. Sleep comes to Gilgamesh like a gentle tide, carrying him into dreams where Enkidu waits with laughter in his eyes and stories of the realms that lie beyond mortal sight. In these visions, he finds the peace that has eluded him in waking life, the understanding that love transcends the boundaries death seems to impose, when he awakens to find bread marking each day of his failure. Gilgamesh finally understands the lesson his journey has been teaching. Immortality cannot be seized by mortal will, but must be discovered in the eternal aspects of temporary existence, in love that continues beyond the beloved's physical presence, in achievements that outlast their creators, in stories that carry truth from one generation to the next. The gift comes unexpectedly, wrapped in compassion rather than triumph. Utnapishtim's wife, moved by the sight of this great king humbled by love and loss, whispers to her husband of the plant that grows in the deepest waters, the thorny herb that can restore youth to those brave enough to seek it in the realm where only the most determined spirits dare to venture. It is not immortality itself, but its shadow. The promise of extended life that might offer another chance at the transcendence that has eluded. Mortal grasp, you descend with Gilgamesh into the primordial waters that flow beneath all existence, watching as he dives deeper than any mortal has ever dared, his lungs burning with the need for air that grows more precious with each passing moment. The plant waits in the deepest trenches where sunlight has never penetrated, its thorns sharp enough to draw divine blood, its roots anchored in the very foundations of the world. When his fingers finally close around its stem, you feel the electric shock of possibility coursing through his mortal frame. The journey home begins with renewed hope flowering in his heart like spring after the longest winter. The plant of youth rests safely in his keeping, its power dormant but real, waiting for the moment when wisdom will finally unite with courage to unlock its greatest secrets. Yet even as he travels the familiar paths that lead back towards civilization, you sense the approach of the final lesson his quest was always meant to teach. The oasis where he stops to bathe seems innocent enough, its waters clear and inviting after the long journey through desert places where shade exists only as memory and promise. As Gilgamesh enters the cooling embrace of the spring, setting aside his precious burden for just a moment, the ancient serpent emerges from the depths with eyes that hold the wisdom of cycles, birth and death, growth and decay, the eternal renewal that requires the sacrifice of old forms so that new ones might emerge. The serpent's consumption of the plant is not theft but destiny fulfilling itself according to laws older than human understanding. In the creature's immediately renewed youth, its freshly shed skin gleaming like silver in the desert sun, Gilgamesh witnesses the very immortality he has sought, not as permanent preservation of individual identity, but as participation in the endless cycle of transformation that defines all existence. The snake's gift is also his teaching. True immortality lies not in avoiding death, but in embracing the larger life that death makes possible. The laughter that rises from Gilgamesh's throat carries notes of revelation rather than bitterness, the recognition of a cosmic joke whose punchline illuminates rather than mocks. His quest is succeeded precisely by failing, teaching him through loss what victory never could have revealed. The plant is gone, but the wisdom it represents remains, growing within his consciousness like a seed planted in fertile soil, promising harvests of understanding that will nourish generations yet unborn. The return to Uruk unfolds like a meditation on the beauty of impermanence. Each familiar landmark encountered with eyes newly opened to the preciousness that finite existence bestows upon all things. The walls of the city rise before him, not as barriers but as embraces, defining a space where mortal love can flourish precisely because it is temporary, where achievements gain meaning from their vulnerability to time's passage. In the palace gardens, where fountains continue their eternal conversations with the sky, Gilgamesh finds peace in the recognition that Enkidu's death was not defeat but transformation, not ending but graduation to a form of existence that transcends the limitations of physical embodiment. His friend's love persists in the changed heart of the king, in the wisdom purchased through grief, in the compassion that now flows from one who has walked to the edge of the world and returned with empty hands full of invisible treasures. The years that follow pass like chapters in a book whose pages turn with increasing gentleness, each season bringing its own gifts of understanding to the king who has learned to read the languages written in sunset and sunrise, in the flowering of trees and the migration of birds. His reign becomes legendary not for its conquests, but for its wisdom. Not for the cities destroyed, but for the justice that creates conditions where human consciousness can flourish. The stories begin to spread while he still lives, carried by merchants and travelers to distant lands where other seekers of truth recognize in his tale the universal patterns that connect all heroic journeys. Scribes labor by lamplight to preserve his adventures in cuneiform pressed into clay tablets, ensuring that future generations will inherit the wealth of wisdom purchased through divine friendship and mortal loss. You drift forward through time, like a leaf carried by river current, watching as the tale of Gilgamesh flows into the great stream of human storytelling, joining the eternal conversation between generations about the meaning of existence, the value of love, the mystery of death. In every retelling, new facets of truth catch the light. New applications of ancient wisdom illuminate contemporary challenges. The ziggurats of Babylon rise and fall like waves on an endless shore, each generation of builders adding their own interpretations to the architectural prayers their ancestors began. Yet through all the cycles of construction and decay, the story persists, adapted to new languages and cultures but retaining its essential power to awaken sleeping hearts to the recognition of their own heroic potential. In the libraries where knowledge gathers like sediment in a river delta, the tablets containing Gilgamesh's adventures rest alongside the records of kings and the observations of astronomers, contributing their unique voice to the great chorus of human understanding. Scholars debate the historical accuracy of specific events, while missing the deeper truth that some stories transcend the boundaries between fact and fiction, carrying meanings too profound for ordinary categories to contain. The rivers continue their eternal flow, the Euphrates and Tigris writing their own stories in the landscape, their waters carrying both silt and dreams toward the sea that receives all offerings with equal acceptance. In their patient movement, you recognize the same principle that governs all lasting achievement, not the dramatic gesture that burns brightly and fades quickly, but the steady accumulation of purpose that shapes continents through persistence rather than force. Civilizations rise along their banks, each one learning again the lessons that water has always taught, that strength comes through flexibility. That power flows most efficiently when it follows the path of least resistance, that the greatest achievements result from partnership between conscious intention and natural law. The cities flourish when they honor these teachings, decline when they forget the wisdom the rivers embody. In the gardens where lovers meet beneath star-scattered skies, Gilgamesh's story continues to work its quiet magic, teaching each new generation that friendship is the highest form of love, that mortality gives meaning to every moment, that the greatest adventures are journeys of inner transformation rather than external conquest. Young couples read his tale by moonlight and understand that their own love participates in the same eternal patterns that connected the great king to his wild companion. The desert winds carry fragments of his story to nomad camps where elders share the ancient wisdom around fires that burn with the same light that illuminated the first human gatherings. In their voices, Gilgamesh lives again, his struggles and victories becoming teaching tools for young hearts learning to navigate the mysteries of existence. The hero becomes a bridge between generations, his experience translating timeless truths into forms that each age can understand. As you drift through the centuries, you see his influence spreading like ripples from a stone cast into still water, touching shores of consciousness far removed from the original impact. Poets invoke his name when writing a friendship that transcends death. Philosophers reference his journey when exploring questions of mortality and meaning. Artists find in his story the perfect expression of humanity's eternal quest for transcendence. The epic becomes a mirror in which each reader discovers their own reflection, recognizing in Gilgamesh's triumphs and failures the universal patterns that define all human experience. His divine heritage speaks to the spark of transcendence that dwells within every consciousness, while his mortal limitations remind each seeker that greatness must be achieved within the constraints that define earthly existence. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the veils between worlds grow thin, you can sense his presence still moving through the collective dream of humanity, his story continuing to unfold in the hearts of all who struggle with loss, who quest for meaning, who seek to transform suffering into wisdom. He has achieved the only immortality available to mortal beings, the eternal life that flows through stories that capture fundamental truths about the nature of existence. The rivers flow on, their voices carrying the same messages they have always sung, that all things pass, but some things endure. That love transcends the boundaries death seems to impose. That consciousness is the greatest gift the universe has ever produced. In their eternal song, Gilgamesh's laughter mingles with Enkidu's joy, creating harmonies that will continue to inspire as long as water flows toward the sea. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, witnesses to countless human stories that rise and fall like waves on an infinite ocean. Yet among all the tales they have observed, the friendship of Gilgamesh and Enkidu holds a special place, representing the moment when consciousness first fully understood its own capacity for love that transcends individual limitation. Devotion that transforms both giver and receiver into something greater than either could achieve alone in the eternal now, where all stories exist simultaneously. You rest in the knowledge that every ending is also a beginning, every loss a doorway to new understanding, every death a graduation to forms of existence that transcend the boundaries of time and space. The great king sleeps now in the heart of mystery itself, his quest complete not in the way he originally imagined, but in the only way that ultimate questions can ever be, resolved through surrender to the larger purpose that weaves all individual threads into the infinite tapestry of meaning. The rivers flow toward the sea, carrying with them the dreams of every generation, the hopes of every seeker, the love of every friendship that has ever dared to challenge the limitations that define ordinary existence. In their eternal movement, the story of Gilgamesh continues to unfold, finding new expressions in every heart that opens to the recognition that heroism lies not in conquering death, but in living so fully that death becomes merely another adventure in consciousness's infinite journey home to itself, and in the gentle sound of water flowing over ancient stones, in the whisper of wind through reed and grass, in the eternal conversation between earth and sky, the greatest love story ever told continues to speak its truth to all who have ears to hear. That consciousness is the universe awakening to its own divine nature. That friendship is the highest form of worship. That mortality is not limitation, but opportunity. And that every ending contains within itself the seed of endless beginning. Asterisk, asterisk, dot, 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 asterisk, dot, dot.